Check out this internet.
Tonight, as we come on the air, Ukrainian forces are mounting a fierce counteroffensive against Russia, officials claiming several victories as the White House scrambles to contain the fallout from President Biden's speech. In Ukraine, battles still raging and some optimism among Ukrainian forces, claiming they've retaken 2 villages in the south as well as several in the north and east. Tonight, after the president's speech on the world stage, the administration walking back one key line after Biden said of Russian President Vladimir Putin, this man cannot remain in power. Today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken trying to clarify, saying that the U.S. does not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else. Just before the president's address in Warsaw, Russian missiles striking in and around Lviv, only about 40 miles from the Polish border. Firefighters working for hours to contain the inferno at a fuel depot on the outskirts of the city. And tonight, Ukrainian President Zelensky revealing his positions for ending this war. We have team coverage tonight from the region. ABC's senior national correspondent Terry Moran leads us off from Lviv.
Tonight, Ukraine is pressing its counterattack on several fronts, claiming new victories on the battlefield. Government officials here say Ukrainian forces have retaken several villages around Kharkiv in the east. That's a city that's held out against Russian assaults for weeks. And they say more territory has been retaken near Sumy in the north, threatening Russia's overstretched supply lines. And villages outside besieged Mariupol in the south were also retaken, officials say. Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed his people overnight, and he accused the West of lacking the courage to take on Vladimir Putin, calling on NATO to give his country more tanks and planes, asking for 1% of its arsenal of those weapons.
Із захисниками Маріуполя.
Zelensky described speaking with Ukrainian defenders in Mariupol, calling their heroism astonishing, and adding, if only those who have been thinking for 31 days on how to hand over dozens of jets and tanks had 1% of their courage. Meanwhile, Russia continues to pound cities across Ukraine. The Russians released this new video of the missile strikes targeting fuel depots and defense infrastructure in the western city of Lviv and southwest of the capital city of Kyiv, damaging supplies for Ukrainian forces. Our James Longman on the scene.
This is an oil depot. You can see the flames there burning. This city was meant to be a sanctuary for thousands, and now it feels like the war has come to them.
Some of those attacks struck very close to the border with Poland, and right before President Biden delivered a fiery speech in Warsaw where he issued this blunt warning to Putin.
Don't even think about moving on 1 single inch of NATO territory. We have sacred obligation. We have a sacred obligation under Article 5 to defend each and every inch of NATO territory with the full force of our collective power.
And then, in the last lines of his speech, perhaps carried away by the moment, Biden seemed to call for an end to Vladimir Putin's rule.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken quickly walked back Biden's words.
We do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter.
Republican Senator and ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee Jim Risch called Biden's comment a horrendous gaffe and urged the president to stay on script.
This administration has done everything they can to stop escalating. There's not a whole lot more you can do to escalate than to call for regime change.
The Kremlin offered a quick and terse response. The president of Russia is elected by Russians, a spokesman said. The war grinds on the outskirts of Kyiv. Shelling turned this neighborhood into a ghost town. The debris still smoldering. Yaroslav was here when the bombs fell. He says there were 1 or 2-story buildings. It's clear that there was nothing or no one here, no weapons at all. They have destroyed everything. In the southern city of Mykolaiv, troops watched for signs of Russian advances from their trenches. Captured Russian tank passing through a checkpoint. Unka is a soldier. He says, we are going to protect our country, our freedom, and our democracy. It does not matter what happens. We will stay to fight to defend the country until death.
So many staying to fight. Terry Moran back with us now from Lviv. And Terry, we're just learning about a new interview with Ukrainian President Zelensky revealing his positions for ending the war.
That's right, Whit. Zelensky gave an interview to independent Russian journalists, sending a message that Ukraine would do a peace deal if Russia withdraws its troops to those territories it occupied before the war began in eastern Ukraine and Crimea. And in exchange, Ukraine would establish neutrality, not join NATO, and non-nuclear status. And the whole deal would have to be guaranteed by third countries, probably including the United States. Those peace talks will resume in Turkey tomorrow. Whit?
Terry Moran leading us off. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
There's a powerful David versus Goliath lesson emerging from Russia's brazen, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine that should give deep pause to global superpowers who think they can simply muscle the world into whatever shape they want. Every Russian tank that gets fried in Ukraine is sending the message that traditional armies can no longer expect to dominate simply because they have more troops, weapons, and money. Russian armored vehicles are falling victim to next-generation light anti-tank weapons, NLAWs, which can be carried by individual soldiers, unslung in seconds, and deployed with little training but deadly accuracy. There are credible reports that Russia has already lost $5 billion worth of military equipment in just a month of fighting in Ukraine. That's the reality of contemporary warfare. Smaller, nimbler groups fighting back effectively against lumbering, dumb relics of the past. Despite being the 5th largest fighting force on the planet and starting the war with 5 times the number of active military as Ukraine, Russia has been stymied in what virtually all observers expected to be a cakewalk. The human cost for Russia is even more staggering. Nearly 10,000 soldiers killed in action, including at least 5 generals. Which isn't to say that Russia isn't also inflicting massive, horrific violence against Ukraine, or that it won't prevail in this conflict, especially the longer things drag on. But this war underscores what James Dale Davidson and Lord William Rees-Mogg called the changing logic of violence and the diminishing returns to violence in their prophetic 1997 book, The Sovereign Individual. As weapons have become smaller, cheaper, more effective, and more widely dispersed, it's harder and harder for old-style militaries to quickly and effectively achieve their objectives through brute force, as they meet resistance at every turn. That resistance includes information warfare, such as hacking and cyber attacks, but also the use of social media, which Ukraine's President Zelensky has excelled at, to project an aura of invincibility and to cast the conflict in stark terms of good versus evil. This lesson shouldn't be new to Americans, as our failures over the past 2 decades in Afghanistan and Iraq underscored the new reality that old-school invasion and occupation is more expensive and temporary than it is quick and effective. But Russia's incompetence drives home in graphic detail to us, and one hopes to the Chinese officials supposedly eyeing an invasion of Taiwan that even if Goliath does take out David, the price is too high and the victory too transient to bother undertaking. If the collapse of the Soviet Union, that gargoyle incarnation of belief in top-down authority, power, and decision-making, was the beginning of the end of the 20th century's romance with the nation-state, then Russia's blundering in Ukraine and the US's in Central Asia and the Middle East may be its epitaph. The future belongs not to the ignorant armies of the night who seek to command and control, but to those who embrace and empower the decentralization of weapons, technology, information, currency, and individual ingenuity and courage.